been well trained from prior webinars. We will unmute everyone, obviously, toward the end when we go into some breakout sessions to network. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our very good friend, the Consul General of Ireland in New York, Ciaran Madden, to say a few words before we get started. Oh, and before I forget, just to give a virtual round of applause to Ciaran and his colleagues at the Department of Foreign Affairs, because as many of you heard, Ireland was voted into the UN Security Council yesterday. So congratulations, Ciaran, and the microphone is yours.
Can you hear me? My link is pretty poor, I'm afraid, today.
You're a little bit low if you're able to get closer to the mic.
The mic is here somewhere around my ears. I'm not sure how these things.
That's better.
Speak loudly. Yeah, look, thanks. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to kind of be in Philadelphia. I haven't been since late February, early March, and delighted to see so many familiar faces. And delighted to be here for your 21st birthday as a chamber, because I wouldn't dream of having an alcoholic celebration with you before your 21st birthday. But I am now, of course, appropriately equipped with a nice bottle of small batch Teelings. And it's a bit early in my day to be starting into it, but I will do so later on in honor of the chamber. You're speaking about some of the, some of the madness that's gone on in the last 3 months, COVID, the lockdown, and all of that throws into relief. And it raises concerns for everybody about supply chain. Supply chain has become part of the conversations, things that we took for granted before now. There was questions being asked about supply chain that we wouldn't have thought before. Or maybe they were being asked by some, but not as openly or as broadly. And in the middle of all that, the role of chambers like the IABCN is so important to advocate for links beyond our respective borders. From our point of view, of course, it's about ensuring that Ireland is seen as a reliable partner for trade, a reliable partner in supply chains. I think the last 3 months have shown it has shown that is actually true. It's not just rhetoric, that we are a partner in these supply chains. And we look at the links between Ireland and Philadelphia in the life sciences. Things worked in an uninterrupted fashion, and they will do so again in the future. But it's just we need to be mindful of the pressures that are there in this regard. So the role of the chamber has been so important and will be so important going forward. You know, my views often expressed on the professionalism and sense of purpose of the chamber. So I will repeat them every time because I believe them very strongly. Next, as Kevin said, it's a small moment of pride, just that Ireland was elected to a temporary seat on the UN Security Council yesterday. Us in the consulate were at best backing singers in the effort. We gave a hand here and there, but really it was a fantastic effort driven by the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach, our ambassador to the United Nations, Geraldine Byrne-Nason, and a huge team of people in New York and Dublin and globally. And it was no easy feat. We were up against Canada and Norway, and both very solid UN citizens, as Bono said at the campaign launch. You know, he tried to think of bad things to say about our competitors. And he said the worst you could think of is Canadians are nice and Norwegians are tall. So that's the worst thing you can say about your rivals. It's a hard competition. So I really, my colleagues and the political leadership really did a stunning job to get elected. The last thing I want to say is just about some work that we have been doing in the consulate over the last 18 months or so. And it goes to something that I've noticed in the events that we as a consulate host, the events that we speak at, and the events that we attend, that almost invariably the rooms are all white. And that isn't a reflection of New York City, it's not a reflection of Philadelphia, it's not a reflection of the United States, and no more either is it actually a reflection of Ireland. And I was trying, over the last 18 months, been trying to understand why that's the case, why we don't get further, and we reach different audiences. And in that work, came across the statistic different sources give different numbers, but there seems to be broad agreement that on the estimate that between 30 and 38% of African Americans have Irish heritage. And we know some of that comes from dark places in history, but an awful lot of it doesn't. But the connections were lost over time for various reasons. And we're trying to find ways to build them up. So over the last few months, we have been sponsoring oral history, the collection of oral histories in NYU of non-white Irish Americans, and some stunning stories have come out in that. I was also honored to host here in the residence on the 26th of February, the launch of the first African American Irish Diaspora Network. And it was just a fantastic event. The people we had in the room were just stunning. Everything, you know, we had all walks of life: musicians, bankers, academics, teachers, students. It was just really, really a wonderful slice of life. And it was, I think, it started something important. And I think how important it was has been thrown into relief by the events of the last 3 weeks. And if there are ways in which we can work with you in Philadelphia, with the Chamber, with the Irish Beauty in Philadelphia on building those links also, we'd love to do so, both with the consulate and with the African American Irish Diaspora Network and with other partners. We have a few more bits of work in planning that we hope to roll out in the months ahead. And it's important work, and if we give the thing a push, it'll continue for years ahead, and there's work of years in it because it's undoing, I suppose, a lack of connection for years. But it's important if we get it going, us here, we can do some good for all of us and for our wider community. So if there's ways we can share the load on this, I would love to do so. We can talk to you more here later, or we can talk. I'll talk to Kevin, of course, about it, and Alana from the Chamber. But any of you in the Philadelphia Irish community would love to work with you on that. And that's all I have. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Teelings and talking with some of you in whatever shape we're thrown into the breakout rooms. So thank you very much, Kevin and Alana.
Ciaran, thank you, and we'd be thrilled to work with you on that endeavor. And I second everything that you said. For those of you who haven't seen it, there is a nice article in the, I think it's the most recent version of Irish American Magazine on the event that Ciaran mentioned. But check it out if you get the chance, the event with the African American Irish Diaspora Network. So more to come from us on that in the coming months. And yes, someone asked about sharing the article. I will scan that or find the link and make sure that we do that. Moving on to the rest of the program tonight, we were very fortunate last year to have our inaugural Good Spirits event, and to have at that event John Teeling, one of Teeling's founders. I want to thank Rob Caldwell, who's here tonight to speak for Teeling and give us the tour, and his colleague Ruth Dunn. They've joined us from Dublin and put a lot of work into the program tonight. Today marks the 5th anniversary of the opening of Teeling's Distillery in Dublin, so they are actually celebrating an anniversary or birthday as well. So congratulations to Teeling. And we are greatly appreciative that they took time on this night in particular to join us here in Philadelphia and elsewhere. I'll let Rob speak to his background a bit, but it's quite interesting. He's been around the world and finally settled in Ireland for a while after seeing Teeling's program. And with that, I will turn it over to Rob to introduce himself and to take us through tonight's program, including the tour of Teeling's Distillery. Rob?
Cheers. Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Ciaran. Thanks, Alana. Thanks, everybody. Before I begin, quick shout out to Paul McCracken, who seems to be in the distillery right now. Nice work.
When you said that there was going to be a tour, I thought that I would meet you there, and now I'm confused why no one else is here.
Yeah, well, now you're taking it, so lead us away. Cool. So yeah, my name's Rob Caldwell, and I'm the global brand ambassador for Teeling Whiskey. So my position used to be traveling the world and talking to everyone about the fabulous Teeling Irish Whiskey, and nowadays it seems to be sitting at home and talking to my computer about Teeling Whiskey. not nearly as glamorous, but still quite enjoyable. I've got a fantastic array of Teeling products behind me. But yeah, today I'm going to have you for a short period of time. So what we decided to do, take you on a virtual tour of the first new distillery in Dublin in 125 years. And then I've got a couple of cocktails from the Dublin distilleries, the Dublin cocktail menu, or the Bang Bang Bar cocktail menu, as we call it. Simplified just a little bit so you can reproduce them at home and make yourself some fabulous Teeling cocktails. So without any kind of further ado, we may as well kick off. Just allow me to share my screen here, and we'll go on a tour. All right, so I can't see the chat pane anymore, but can someone give me a shout and tell me that you can see that all right?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect, excellent. Thank you very much, guys. All right, so we're going to kick off. So hopefully the internet is all good, but welcome to the Teeling Whiskey Distillery. So obviously a loading screen is not nearly as glamorous as the outside of the distillery, but we've got to kick off. So let me just pause it really quickly, see if I can get us on the welcome screen. Close. All right, so what we have here is like I said, the first new distillery in Dublin in 125 years. So Dublin, a lot of rich distilling heritage, used to be the epicenter of whiskey production, industrialization of the whiskey making process. And the Teeling family have links as far as the 1700s. So historical with the Walter Teeling distillery having been established in Dublin 500 meters down the road from where this distillery sits in Newmarket Square in 1782. The immediate Teeling family has been distilling in the island since 1980s with two previous distilleries operated by John, who sends his regards, John Teeling. He eventually handed those distilleries off to his sons, Jack and Stephen Teeling, who established this distillery, which we're celebrating today. So everything that we're doing at Teeling is very much innovation and the premiumization of the Irish whiskey category. You know, there's a long history with plenty of provenance, plenty of history in regards to Irish whiskey, and we don't have the time to really tell it. We saw a downfall of the category, and friends kind of joined together and kind of saved the category in a way by moving all their separate facilities down to Cork. But what it did, it kind of defined onto a very broad category into a very narrow kind of framework. And throughout the 80s and 90s, more Irish whiskies were more similar than they were different. Now it's really about this revival, this renaissance, this really kind of coming back to the very broad nature of Irish whiskies and talking about the styles of Irish whiskey. So we're very much kind of leading with that. We don't want to be seen as, say, the single malt producer or the blend producers, or even the weird and wacky Finnish whiskey producers. We're very much about the exploration of the new flavors possible in Irish whiskey due to some loose classification and a lot of innovation. So leading us through the distillery, so we got this is our welcome as you come into the distillery, and this is our exhibition space. So basically, just kind of the whole area as people kind of come in. We kind of tell the story in pictograms and infographics about the kind of history and the hundreds of years of Irish whiskey history, but just kind of fast forwarding through. You can see there we've got plenty of stories to tell. I think we'll just kind of zip ahead here to our program. So again, they're kind of unconventionally independent is something we strive for. Basically, what we're doing is our DNA is not, like I said, a style of Irish whiskey. It's very much being free to experiment with flavors. And you can see a sample of the barrels that we use in our products. So sherry, obviously historically relevant. So red wine from Napa Valley, some white Burgundy, Chardonnays, Madeira, fortified wine from the island of Madeira, rums, starting to see a resurgence in rum-influenced barrels, and obviously port barrels as well. And then taking a quick right there, you can see our Game of Thrones inspired chair made from barrels, and our founders, Jack and Stephen Teeling, so sons of John Teeling. So yeah, very much interested in the revival of the Irish whiskey category, and that is showcased by our logo, which obviously I can't find, so I have to go back one slide.
Hey,
Down
Rob.
here.
Rob,
Sorry?
you're occasionally breaking up. Just to
Oh,
let you
sorry.
know.
Oh, sorry.
Might
It
have
might be the tour. It's RAM heavy, but yeah, breaking it down to our logo here. So that phoenix representing the rebirth of the category. So phoenix rising from the ashes of a pot still, as you can see here. So let me just zoom ahead. Hopefully, I don't keep breaking up. Lovely shot of the overhead or the sky view. That's something very few people get to see. This is a composite of the multiple different images shot at different angles, but it's a lovely overview of what the building looks like from the sky without a roof. So jumping ahead, so you think of, if you bring it back to basics and you think of alcohol is basically water, sugar, and yeast. Whiskey is just basically beer. So, you know, historically, you're single malt making a beer with 100% malted barley and you're distilling that through. What we're doing is a lot of innovation and making a lot of different beers and turning that into a whiskey. And then, as most of you probably know, spends 3 years minimum inside a wooden barrel. In Ireland, we can use a lot of different seasoned casks and wood types, but that will also impact the flavor of what we're making, and we like to experiment with a lot of different flavors. So right here we have our mill. So what we need to do is find our sugar. So sugar, water, and yeast. We're making sugars from grains. So think of barley, malted barley, rye, wheat, oats, corn, or maize. Basically, our silos, they get shipped up into our mill, built up into a fine powder or a grist, and then we rush ahead to our lauter tun. So what we want to do is basically turn those starches into fermentable sugars. Think of like a porridge. So this lauter tun, essentially, if you go back to this slide here, you can see a bit more of a back view of it. This is basically the addition of hot water. That grains or that grist is essentially just soaking sugar, turning it into a sugar water, and then that false floor opens up, and what we have is a wort, W-O-R-T, a sugar water. And then the spent grains are the husks of those malted and unmalted barley husks, which are seen, oh, just gone slightly too far, which are seen here. That spent grain, you know,
Rob,
that sugarless grain. Yes, sorry.
just real quick, the breaking up happens less when you're speaking more slowly.
Oh,
Just to let
okay.
you know. Yeah.
Perfect. Yep.
Sorry,
No
sorry to interrupt you. Just want to let you know so everyone can hear.
Yeah, I thought it might have been the tour taking up the bandwidth. Always fun. So yeah, basically, our spent grain gets shipped out to farms and used as a byproduct, but water is what we really want here. So fermenters with the addition of yeast. So yeast is a monocellular organism. It lives in water. It eats sugar, and as a byproduct, creates carbon dioxide and alcohol. So at this point, we're creating a beer. Oregon pine washbacks, basically encouraging a lot of natural fermentation flavors and esters coming from the yeast strains, and then into stainless steel for the remainder of the life cycle of the yeast. So we have a beer at a roughly 10% ABV, and then shipping on through to Allison, Natalie, and Rebecca, named Jack Teeling's 3 daughters. So essentially, think of them. People hate me for saying this, but think of them as giant copper kettles. The copper helps strip out the unnatural flavors that we don't want in the whiskey. And basically, what we're doing is boiling away that beer or stewing away that beer because, Rob? Yes.
Rob, Ruth here. I'm just going to try and sign in. Maybe if you because it's breaking up quite a bit, if you exit out of that, and I'll try and share my screen. Alana, if you can give me permission to share my screen, I'll see if that might help.
So how's that, guys? Is that much better without that kind of slowdown? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it is.
I think
Yeah,
so.
we did,
So if
yeah,
you
we did
if
one
you
earlier
want to
today.
just
I think it's
do what you do best, Rob, and you can keep talking about it, and I'm just going to sign myself in here and try and share my screen.
okay, perfect. Yeah, so we have our stills, Alison, Natalie, and Rebecca. Basically, we're boiling away that beer. The beer or the alcohol, it turns into a vapor or a steam at a lower temperature than water, like in a kettle. So basically, we raise the temperature, we extract the alcohol. Excuse me, and then we've got a neutral grain spirit, so roughly between 66% ABV and 88, because we triple distill in Ireland, so we can get nice high ABVs, and we retain a lot of that spice from the unmalted barley. Then we add those to casks at 66% ABV, and it spends a minimum of 3 years breathing in and out of the grains of the wood, bringing with it the flavor of the wood, the charring, and the seasoning. So essentially the flavors of the liquid that used to live within the grains of the wood. So really exciting. Bourbon casks are primarily used in Ireland and Scotland due to their proliferation. You know, in the American whiskey category, they use a bourbon casks or American oak cask once, and then it's kind of useless to them. So they get shipped to Ireland and Scotland, where we use these ex-bourbon casks. But at Teeling, we like to do a lot of experimentation. So we've used up to 100 different seasoned casks and alternate wood casks and different size and shape of casks in the maturation of our whiskies. So really exciting, just to kind of name a few. So we've got our single malt here behind me. So you may have seen this one. It's a combination of 5 different wine casks. We have our single grain, which is a corn-based whiskey, similar to American whiskeys, but it spends 5 years. That's for me. Weird audio loop. It spends 5 years in Cabernet Sauvignon casks, and then we obviously have the small batch which we're going to talk about here. This is a blend of corn whiskey and malt whiskey aged separately in these ex-bourbon casks and then married together in Central American rum casks. Give it a lovely, bold Irish whiskey with a beautiful rum raisin nose and then a nice, long, dried fruit finish. So we're going to show how we can use that in cocktails. How are we going for breaking up? Sorry that was happening there. Is it better now? Perfect. All right. So yeah, let's instead move on to the cocktail portion of things. And I can show you 2 completely different styles of cocktails that we make in our distillery. And yeah, something you can reproduce at home. So obviously we're starting with an award-winning premium Irish whiskey. So we're just going to highlight those flavors without kind of overbalancing it, without going crazy with a million different ingredients. So to be a little bit different, we're going to make syrups. So these are based on 2 syrups, super simple. The first of which is a pineapple syrup. So breaking this down, we have a pineapple juice that I actually got from one of these bad boys. So the pineapple rings, you probably have one of these in the cupboard that never gets used. So I basically opened it up, pulled the juice out, weighed it, and then added an equal amount of white sugar, and then just stirred until it was dissolved. Squeeze some lemon in, and we're good to go. That's the syrup. So essentially in my cocktail, I've got an ounce measure, but anything will do, a shot glass, as long as you're using the right ratios. But I'm going to use an ounce for now. So essentially a ½ ounce of my sweetener. The important kind of rule to remember with these cocktails is that you can always add more, but you can't take it out once you've added it. So always add sparingly. If you like it sweeter, no problem. Try the recipe as we put it. But if you want it sweeter, you can always add it in. But once it's in there, it ain't coming out. So ½ ounce of our sweetener to 2 ounces of lovely Teeling whiskey. All right, 1, 2. So I'm adding these pre-ice so they can mix together. Because if you add the ice and then top up with soda, it's just going to get washed out. And then to that, I'm adding 4 ounces of soda, which I'm not going to measure because it'll take all day. But I roughly know my glass. So it's not too much soda water. We don't want to wash it away. We still want to taste the whiskey. We still want to taste the pineapple. And then we just want to add a couple of cubes of ice. All right, so I'm going to just give it a stir. I can add some more ice there, get it nice and chilled. But again, same rules apply. I can always add more, but once it's in there, it's a bit of a pain to fish it out. So it would be lovely with a squeeze of lime on top, nice fresh aromas sitting on those lemon oils and those lime oils sitting on the roof of the drink. Unfortunately, I went to the store today to pick up limes and they were out. But any citrus fruit would do. Some lemons, some oranges, pink grapefruit would be fantastic. Just to give it that little bit of acidity, because just on its own might be a little bit on the sweet side for you, but to each their own. We actually reproduced this in a canned cocktail recently with a Danish-based brewery called Tool, their Micropolis cocktails line. So basically they use a fermented pineapple cordial. So that's where they got that kind of bitterness, that sharpness to balance out the sweetness of the pineapple. Nice healthy measure of Teeling whiskey and then soda water. So essentially a whiskey highball with a twist that suits our whiskey a little bit nicer. Nice refreshing summer cocktail for the warmer months. Obviously any questions you have, please feel free to throw them in the comments. So with the next cocktail, we went with a little bit different, something you've probably seen before. It's your kind of whiskey fans cocktail, very popular right now. It's an old fashioned. An old fashioned is essentially just a watered down, sweetened whiskey, for lack of a better term. You've got, a nice healthy measure of ice, healthy measure of whiskey, and normally you have a sugar syrup. Oh, can you pass it around, please? Sorry, I just saw the comments in the cocktail. Yeah, no problem. Here we go. So normally we have a nice, lovely measure of Teeling whiskey. We have a bitters. You've probably seen Angostura bitters, Peychaud's. These are old-fashioned bitters. I'm not going to use these because they're not very easy to find for everybody, and there's a way you can kind of replicate that with the ingredients you probably have at home. So I'm going to grab a microplaner or a small grater, and I'm just going to grab the spices that I have to hand. So what I did was, and obviously did this, off camera because you guys don't have that much time. So I used a Demerara sugar. So this one was a white sugar, pineapple juice. This is a darker golden sugar and some nutmeg. So I just got some fresh nutmeg, grated it in over the hot water. So 1 part hot water, 1 part Demerara sugar, grated a small amount of nutmeg in, small amount of cinnamon, and dark chocolate. Dark chocolate for me, it's the key. A little bit of orange, just the skin of an orange, just a little bit, just a hint, but the dark chocolate, really amazing. Making sure it's boiling water so it melts down as part of the syrup and we get this lovely kind of viscous color. So again, similar kind of ratio. Always again, remembering our we can always add more rule. So again, a 1/2 ounce, probably just a little bit less than a 1/2 ounce of the sweetener. Again, lovely 2 ounces of Teeling small batch. And then an old fashioned, basically what you're doing is diluting that down with nice chilled water. So again, grab our ice. We're just going to stir. Obviously, what you can do again is kind of monitor the progress just by doing a little thing, especially if it's your cocktail. But if you're making it for a few, you want to just stir for about 5 minutes. You want to allow that ice to melt a little bit, nice and chilled. But obviously, I'm not going to spend a full 5 minutes stirring this cocktail. Add a couple more bits of ice, just 1 or 2. And then for the garnish, I just peeled the skin of an orange peel just off the top. You've probably done this before where you squeeze the orange peel and you can see those orange oils really express out of the peel as you pinch it closed. Basically, we want to do that over the top of the cocktail. Those orange oils will basically layer the top of the cocktail and create this lovely aroma. So when you bring the cocktail to your mouth, you're smelling. Your smell is a big part of flavor, as well as tasting. It'll mingle those flavors together really nicely, give it a bit of a twist over the top of the cocktail, and then into the drink like that. But that's, yeah, very simply your old fashioned. You know, 3 main ingredients: whiskey, sugar, and water. Obviously, the addition of bitters kind of brings out that complexity, but this is a very fabulous Irish whiskey with a lot of depth and character that just all we're doing is subtly bringing out those flavors. So a lovely rum raisin characteristics, that dark sugar really kind of bringing out, you know, darker plum, apricot, pear, fig, date. Yeah, could have stirred it a little bit longer, but fantastic, fantastic cocktail. Super simple to be able to reproduce at home. Small batch, you mentioned rum raisin. Yeah, so small batch is a rum finished Irish whiskey. So basically, we've got a corn whiskey and a malt whiskey aged separately in ex-bourbon. They go into, think of it like a chili. You create a chili, day 1, it's great. Day 2, even better. Day 3, even better again, as those separate ingredients have had time to mingle and become something new entirely. So think of those 2 separate whiskeys marrying inside this rum barrel, breathing in and out of the grain of the wood, layering on additional flavor. One of those is a lovely rum raisin nose. We call it Christmas cake in Ireland, but I've made the mistake of saying that in America. It doesn't always land. But yeah, rum raisin sultana, especially on the nose and the front of the palate, but the finish, a little bit more kind of dried fruit characteristics. You know, your figs, your apricots and dates and things. Just call it a really good whiskey. Yeah, it luckily is. It makes my job really easy to just put this whiskey into people's hands. Very versatile whiskey. You can see, you know, it works great in highballs. It goes really great in like your spirit forward cocktails where you know, a large percentage of the cocktail is the whiskey, so you can't really hide too much. Goes great in a whiskey sour, really kind of simple. 2 ounces of Teeling small batch, 1 ounce of lemon juice and a 1/2 ounce of sugar, shaken really well. And it goes well in a fantastic Irish coffee. Please, hopefully this is over soon, and please one day come to the distillery. I can make you the best Irish coffee you've ever had. But yeah, I mean, hopefully they should be simple enough. We've got some infographics that we built to share with you, so you don't have to watch this video back, and hopefully make them at home. So yeah, share with us and tag us on Teeling if you manage to reproduce these cocktails at home. But they've proven quite popular for us in the distillery. You know, people come to the distillery, like unfortunately, you know, the tour broke down for us there, but people come to the distillery and come to Ireland for, you know, a few things. They want to see how whiskey's made, and they want to have a fantastic Irish coffee and a Guinness. Not everyone wants a whiskey or a whiskey cocktail, but we managed to convert them with some fantastic cocktails on the menu. So we do have, you know, your long drinks that kind of appeal to, say, a gin and tonic fan or a vodka lime and soda fan or something like that, where the mixer, the soda water, kind of lengthens out the cocktail a little bit. You've got your whiskey fans cocktails here with the Manhattans, your Boulevardier, your old fashioned. You've got your whiskey sour. You know, the way that we do a whiskey sour really appeals to a margarita fan, a daiquiri fan, and those kind of sour, tart, lovely cocktails. And then we found with this rum influence, we found a lot of global bartenders using it in tiki cocktails. So I've seen some fantastic Mai Tais, pina coladas, and traditional kind of rum-led cocktails utilizing and highlighting the rum finish of Teeling small batch. So yeah, some really great cocktails out there, but I'd love to see you guys trying a dab hand at home. But yeah, thank you very much for having me, guys. I'm really sorry about the tour breaking down. I hope this second portion was much better than the first. Really disappointing there, but sure, that's the nature of this new virtual world. It's not always perfect. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in. I think I've still got 5 minutes, Kevin.
Yes, please. If anyone has questions, please jump in. And Rob, thanks. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
I do have a question for you, but I'll wait for others.
I have a question. I didn't mean to step on you, Kev. Single malt Scotch is known for the different regions, the lowlands, the highlands, the Isle of Malt. Has Ireland, do you have any distinct flavors that come from different parts of Ireland?
Not as yet. I mean, we've got a lot to do. You know, we've got the category of single pot still. It's the only uniquely Irish style of whiskey that we have a lot of uphill kind of struggle to broaden the horizons. You know, first and foremost, we want to bring people to that category, and we want to bring people to Irish single malts, and we want to bring people to Irish single grains and showcase the difference. You know, Irish whiskey, for the most part, tends to be a little bit more fruit forward, but the more whiskeys that we make and the more distilleries that make new whiskeys, the more we'll start to see variants. Right now, it's, you know, we're really trying to establish Dublin as a lovely urban distilling capital. But yeah, I mean, there's a long way to go. Whiskey's a marathon, not a sprint. So, you know, that's the romantic thing. There's things that we're doing and saying now in the industry that will long outlive us. So yeah, I mean, long way to go, but we're excited for the future of Irish whiskey, and even like the classification around Irish whiskey gives us a little bit more freedom. The greatest example of this is probably the technical file for Scotch. It's very kind of strict and prescriptive, and it has to be oak, and it can only be influenced by this, and it has to be 3 years. Whereas Irish whiskey just says has to be aged in wood. So you can see there a little bit of flexibility around the rules. So it gives us a bit more freedom, but adversely, a lot of experimentation needs to do to find out what these other woods and these other seasonings do to Irish whiskey, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Thanks.
Teeling has a 12, 15, 18, 27, 33, and 34-year-old. Are there others? Yeah, there are others. I mean, we have a lot of different whiskeys. Obviously, age statement whiskeys are still pretty important in the whiskey world. We're starting to move away from that and see more of a highlight on the blending aspect and the marriage of different flavors. Why is a 27 so much used? Well, that's the one downside to Irish whiskey is the older you get. So obviously the older whiskey is, it's not necessarily better whiskey, it's just rarer. That goes for Irish, Scotch, anything like that. The more time it spends in wood, the less of it there is due to angel share. So evaporation and soakage, we call it the angel share. So an older whiskey is more expensive because there's less of it. Irish whiskey even more so because there were so few Irish whiskey distilleries in the 70s, 60s and 70s. There was only 2 places making whiskey during that time. So it is even more so rare. That will start to come down in price as more and more distilleries start putting out more and more Irish whiskey. You know, in the 70s, we had 2 distilleries in Ireland. The 90s, there were 4. 2015, there was 6. Today, there's 32. William might have even more up-to-date information. But yeah, ever expanding category of Irish whiskey. Can you comment on the history and relationship of Teeling and Greenore whiskies? Yeah, of course. So the Teeling family used to have a distillery up near Dundalk, Carlingford area in a town called Greenore, or kind of Greenore, Cooley. And the Teeling family and John Teeling, who some of you have probably met before, used to own that distillery. That was bought by Beam Suntory in 2011, 2012. And in the deal, the Teeling family, Jack and Stephen Teeling, they took tens of thousands of barrels of maturing family stock and started the Teeling Whiskey Company. So that's why we have some old stuff. So if you do your math, you know, the first new distillery in Dublin, the Teeling distillery is only established 5 years ago. Where does the 34-year-old come from? It comes from the maturing family stock that the Teeling family made elsewhere. Can you comment more on the wood used to age spirits? Yeah, of course. The favorites and how do they impact taste? Each is different. I mean, my favorite personally, and you know, favorites and flavors subjective, is chestnut. So there's a history in cognac industry of chestnut being used in the maturation of those of cognac and brandy. But the problem with those is they're very thirsty wood. And what we mean by thirsty is you go back to what I said about angel share and evaporation. In oak, which are fantastic casks, you lose about 2% in Ireland every year. In chestnut, which dramatically influences flavor in a lovely way, you lose 10% every year. So that really kind of cuts into your profitability and your yield. So there's a way off. You know, the flavor's great. Adversely, you probably got to charge a little bit more because it's rarer. but we're doing a lot of experimentation. William, I don't know if you guys saw at the start, he had this distillery exclusive, the black bottle that come up. They're only available in Dublin at our distillery. And they're a showcase of these different woods' impact on our whiskies. There, William's got it there. So that's a distillery exclusive, so only available in the Dublin distillery. But yeah, a lot of work to be done. We source barrels and woods through barrel wholesalers. They're the kind of main point of contact. You know, someone's job to go to Kentucky and pick up bourbon barrels and go to Napa and pick up wine valleys and they sell them to us. But we've kind of grown beyond that. We start going directly to producers. So directly to rum producers, directly to cognac, sherry, port, Madeira, Malaga, Pinot de Chiron, Muscat. We've done a lot of collaborations. So Jim Barry is a winery in Australia. We gave them our casks. They gave us their casks. And we did collaborations. I think Ruth just posted a link there to a little bit more information. Oh, there you go. The Chestnut cask finished won an award during the week. So that's great news. It's lovely to win. I mean, yeah, it's nice to kind of get things like that because it showcases we're doing something right with this focus on flavor. You know, we can never compete on price with the big guys, but, you know, we've won over 300 international awards for our whiskey. We won World's Best Single Malt at the World Whiskey Awards, the first Irish whiskey to ever win that. So it's nice. It's putting a bit of a spotlight on what we're doing. And hopefully we can grow from there and start to bring people to more interesting, unique, and innovative Irish whiskies. I hope, I'm afraid if I start showing around, I might lose audio. Yeah, that's proven. It was a shitty deal. But I guess you just have to come to Dublin once COVID kind of disappears. It's all part of my master plan. Invite you guys to Dublin and I can take you around the distillery in person. We do have a Manhattan recipe for Teeling small batch. We don't just replace bourbon with small batch. I like a little bit of port in there to bring out that rum raisin element. But if you look at the Teeling Whiskey Facebook page, we just recently put up a Manhattan recipe. It's actually called an Emerald with Irish whiskey for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's basically 2 ounces of Teeling small batch, a half ounce of sweet vermouth, or about an ounce of sweet vermouth, and then just a touch of orange bitters instead of Angostura bitters. But definitely check out the Teeling Whiskey Facebook page, and you'll see a lot more of the distillery cocktails that can be made and reproduced at home. What location in Dublin? It's central, so 5 minutes walk from Christchurch Cathedral, Dublin Castle, 2 minutes walk from St. Patrick's Cathedral, the Liberties area of Dublin. So yeah, stone's throw from everything. You really can walk everywhere. Yeah, probably, again, another 10 minutes to the Liffey that separates the city running north and south. Yeah, really, really central. The Liberties area of Dublin, Newmarket Square, very famous grain trading square in the heart of Dublin. So yeah, definitely check that out. All right. I hope I didn't miss any questions. 5 years, can you explain as I am? Teeling has been, yeah, so the question there, 5 years. So the Teeling distillery has been established and making whiskey for 5 years. The immediate Teeling family have been making whiskey in Ireland since the 80s, and there's links as far back as the 1700s with the Teeling name on Dublin distilleries. But yeah, the Teeling family, the immediate Teeling family, John, Jack, and Stephen, have been making whiskey in Ireland since the 1980s. Selling in the USA through Bacardi as our partner in the USA, so they're our main importer and distributor in the US. We're doing really well, you know, big in markets like Philly. We have one of our regional market managers based in Philly for obvious reasons. New York, Boston, Florida, Denver, Texas, strangely, California. Obviously, you know, big hubs for Irish whiskey. I'm probably missing a couple there. I know Ohio is a really big one. But yeah, exciting, constant growth. You know, Irish, America, the US is the biggest market for Irish whiskey, and yeah, William can tell you way more information on that than I can. As a distillery released their first batch made in the distillery, yeah, we released a single pot still Irish whiskey. So yeah, measure, so that unique, the only unique Irish style of whiskey, a measure of malted and unmalted barley. Really exciting, kind of grow that category out. Completely made in the new distillery, and funnily enough, for the 5th birthday, Alex Chasko, our master distiller and master blender, and I did a tasting about a couple of hours ago where we tasted 5 whiskies from the Dublin distillery. So here's 2 of them there, where we shipped these samples out to some whiskey fans here in Ireland, and basically showcasing what we're doing in Dublin, how we're innovating. We have a peated Irish whiskey. So for those that don't think there's many peated Irish whiskies, we will have one called Black Bits, hopefully later this year in the US, which is fingers crossed. But yeah, exciting, a really exciting future for Irish whiskey. Fastest growing spirits category in the world, and yeah, we're just doing our best to premiumize it, kind of step away from the Irish pub mentality and more towards your premium cocktail bars, your premium whiskey bars, and try and bring people to the category of Irish whiskey. I hope I've grabbed everyone, but yeah, thank you very much, guys. I'm really sorry again for the tour, but I hope I more than made up for it for our cocktail demo, with our cocktail demo.
Rob, that was fantastic, and the tour was excellent too. If anything, it's a nice teaser to make sure that, as you said, everyone visits when they get back to Ireland. So thanks. I learned a long time ago that brand ambassadors are by far the best at giving toasts. So we are going to jump into breakout rooms in a minute. Typically, one of our board members gives the toast at our anniversary celebration, but with Rob on screen here, I am certainly going to defer to him. So Rob, if you could lead us in a toast, and then Alana will set up the breakout rooms in just a moment.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, guys, thanks very much for having me. Have a great afternoon, and here we go. So there are good ships and there are wood ships. There are ships that sail the sea, but the best ships are friendships, and may that always be. Sláinte, guys.
Sláinte.
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone. Ruth, everyone involved in tonight's event. I think with that, we'll break into the breakout rooms, Alana, and hopefully most of you can stay on, have a drink and a chat with some of your fellow members and guests.